What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Yordenis Ugas, the WBA Welterweight champ who was the late replacement for Errol Spence to take on the legend Manny Pacquiao, came into the fight with Pacquiao, a significant underdog, but beat Manny Pacquiao via unanimous decision. The scorecards were 116 to 112, 116 to 112, and 115 to 113. So they basically had it Yordenis Ugas winning either 7 rounds to 5 or 8 rounds to 4. Now, we knew that matchups-wise, that just because the great Errol Spence, the WBC and IBF champion undefeated fighter, had to pull out of the fight, just because he would be absent, didn't mean that this was going to be a significantly easier ride for Manny Pacquiao. Like, at the end of the day, he's still coming into the ring at 42 years old, coming off of a 2-year layoff, looked great in his last fight versus Keith Thurman, handing Keith Thurman his first, and to this day, only loss. So we had an idea of what Manny Pacquiao would be bringing to the table versus Ugas, who, we've seen him fight basically an even fight with Shawn Porter that I would say more than 50% of the people watching the fight thought that Yordenis Ugas deserved the close decision win over Shawn Porter. He wasn't granted that, but Pacquiao still coming into the ring, 42 years old. He's got a very busy political career. A lot of people think that he's going to be running for president of the Philippines. So the fact that he's still gracing us with his presence in the ring, I mean, it's mind-blowing, not only because he's now had a 26-year career, but just because, in the lighter weight classes, people generally wash out by the time they even hit their mid-30s, let alone 40 years old. Like, this is really unbelievable, especially for a guy like Manny Pacquiao, who, since coming into the professional ranks, has been a high-activity, action-packed type of fighter. He's not somebody who's been developing he's a crafty fighter as well, but it's not like he's extended his career by being much less action-packed and then resorting to one punch at a time, hold, do the different things that we see 40-year-old fighters and beyond do to extend their career, even when they're still having success in winning fights. So going into this one, you're thinking, okay, is Manny Pacquiao still going to be the same Manny Pacquiao he was as Keith Thurman, where he's not really showing a ton of physical decline? Somehow he's still able to put these 6 to 8 punch combinations together. He's still able to move in and out of the pocket seamlessly with that amazing footwork, great legs. Like, we were thinking, okay, if Manny Pacquiao is still Manny Pacquiao, he should edge a close fight against Yordenis Ugas. We thought that even if Manny was Manny, that this was going to be a very competitive and tough fight. Well, I don't think that this is the same Manny Pacquiao. For maybe the first time, I'm watching the fight thinking, I can't think of the last time I've seen Manny Pacquiao really reduced to, first of all, he wasn't moving his head like he used to. His legs weren't taking him out of the pocket like he used to. And he was kind of throwing one punch at a time sometimes, like a jab or, a right jab, a right hook. He was still throwing nice punches. And yes, he did find a lot of opportunities to throw combinations. But when he was throwing these combinations, he wasn't landing a lot of these punches. It didn't seem to be overwhelming Ugas. Ugas would turn, circle, hit Manny with a jab or with a double jab or go to the body, which we knew that for Ugas to have success, he would have to go to the body a ton. So Ugas did everything that he would have had to do to have a chance at winning this fight. But what most people, I don't think, were expecting was for, Manny Pacquiao to basically look old overnight. Not to say that Manny Pacquiao can't still beat some good welterweights, but it's going to be tough sledding, if he fights with this performance level against, some of the top 10, top 15 type of welterweights, especially because Manny Pacquiao was never really bodily wise a welterweight to begin with. He was in the lightest of weight classes back in the day and, worked his way up to, 122 to 126, fought once at 135 against David Diaz, then went to 147. And, he's been basically an outlier, both in physical ability and in bringing your punching power up while maintaining speed. So he was just overwhelming everybody from the Shane Mosleys to the Margaritos, Miguel Cottos. And this was after overwhelming the Moraleses, Barreras. I mean, this was really sensational stuff to watch over the past, 2 decades. But in this fight against Yordenis Ugas, again, I'm seeing Manny Pacquiao throw one punch at a time. I'm seeing him more reluctant to jump into the pocket because of Yordenis Ugas' anticipation, his vision, his preparation and counter punching. He's got a beautiful right hand counter. He, again, goes to the body, and he was just letting that jab go, where you would see Manny Pacquiao's head get rocked back, and, he would take a step back and kind of reassess. When it was looking like Errol Spence was going to be fighting Manny Pacquiao, a lot of the people who thought Pacquiao was going to have a lot of success were asking the question, when have we seen Manny Pacquiao truly controlled with the jab? And I was thinking, Errol Spence has one of the best jabs in boxing, period. And Yordenis Ugas has a very good jab as well. And given the physical strength and the attributes being, significantly bigger than Pacquiao, plus Pacquiao being 42, it just looked like that jab was a lot for Manny to have to work around. Yet, again, he found his opportunities to somehow get inside, but he would let his punches go. Ugas would either parry or slip, majority of these. And what Manny wasn't doing is, after throwing the combinations, being able to jump right back out of the pocket, out of harm's way, out of range, to then jump back in. Manny Pacquiao's career has basically been like, you got this sports car, this hyper, super fast car, and you got your foot on the gas going, and then you take it off, abruptly, and it goes from 100 something to barely anything, right? And then you put your foot on the gas again, and then take it off, and then put it back on, and then that type of a pace was just something that fighters were not equipped to deal with. And so they would be, they'd be getting hit in a way that they look like they're surrounded. And then so sometimes they'll turtle up like Joshua Clottey, or they'll try to, punch back and get dropped like Mosley or Miguel Cotto, trying to counter punch and then getting hit because Manny Pacquiao is throwing the 5th and 6th punch to some of these combinations. I mean, look how he dropped Keith Thurman in the first round in his very last fight. Well, Ugas, again, was able to make most of those punches miss, and then Manny Pacquiao would not jump out of harm's way after letting his punches go. So he'd kind of be sitting in the pocket there to be countered. And Ugas, again, this was I would say it was a competitive but clear decision win, to where, round after round, you know when it's getting bad for the celebrity fighter, for the beloved legend, when you start working out different frameworks where, you think, okay, could the judge be looking at this and maybe give Pacquiao a round because of this? And so when that starts becoming more and more difficult to find, plausible deniability to give the A-side, the clear A-side fight of the round, because let's be honest, boxing and the boxing public would have loved for Manny Pacquiao to have won this fight so that he could go on to fight an Errol Spence, a Terrence Crawford, something sensational, right? I mean, Yordenis Ugas, I follow him on Instagram, seems like a great guy, like a really nice dude, and he's obviously worked his ass off to get to where he is, and coming from Cuba, there's just a lot to admire about the Yordenis Ugas story, and I hope that he does get his props and his money in the remaining fights that he has going forward, because Ugas is no spring chicken himself. He's 35. So going into the scorecards, after seeing a fight that to me looked like Manny Pacquiao was behind a few rounds, in some of these, rounds that were competitive, but they weren't particularly close. Like if you're watching the rounds, there shouldn't have been more than 4 rounds maybe that you could actually give Manny Pacquiao. Like this could have been a 9 rounds to 3 fight. It could not have been a 6 rounds to 6 fight. Would y'all agree with me on that? So going into the scorecards, I'm just thinking, man, don't do this, boxing. Don't rob Yordenis Ugas of this victory, because you could kind of, contort your argument into a way to give Manny Pacquiao some of the. Don't do this. Let the guy who deserves to win this fight win this fight. I know, having watched Manny over the years, it's difficult to stomach. You hate to see legends get old in the ring. Manny Pacquiao was just getting hit a lot more than we're used to seeing him get hit. Yordenis Ugas not only outlanded Manny, but he out-jabbed Manny, and he landed at a higher percentage than Pacquiao. Like, you know, you never see somebody land the percentage of power shots that Ugas landed on Pacquiao against Pacquiao. His head movement, his foot movement, he's just been too elusive, too fast, and, you know, it's just blinding. It's been blinding, and this time, it wasn't blinding. We saw Manny standing there and letting his hands go because, I mean, he still had the will to win. He was fighting his ass off. He was really trying to win this fight, throwing punches, doing everything that he could, taking a lot of shots. Like, you saw Pacquiao's face marked up in a way that we haven't seen in a long, long time. I mean, maybe if you go back to when he was fighting like the Eric Moraleses, you could find instances of this. And he has been in some very difficult fights, but we haven't seen him just look kind of this vulnerable, sitting in punching range and just getting kind of pasted up over the course of several rounds. So again, going into this scorecard, I was just hoping that a robbery didn't ensue, and it did not ensue. The right guy won the fight. So the next question is like, so what happens? And to be frank, I had final fight types of vibes. Like, I don't know if he's going to return to the ring to have one more send-off fight, but I feel like his quest for greatness in the ring and to be the best and to prove that you're the best time and time again, I think that those days might be over in light of this type of loss for Manny Pacquiao. Again, he didn't get knocked out. This was, I would say, a competitive but clear decision win for Ugas, but it wasn't a knockout, but he did get beaten up, hit with more punches than we like to see him get hit with. And, you know, you're on borrowed time. You're 42 years old. At this point, if you're not going to be the best, I don't see Manny Pacquiao getting in line and fighting any. I mean, he won't have to get in line. His career and his future is clearly up to him. He could get another big fight. Boxing will find a way to make money happen, you know, in a lot of these cases, unless there's political reasons for fights not to happen, right? But it's not like Manny Pacquiao has to, you know, fight another 7 guys before getting back into this title picture, right? He's usually, you know, you could be 1 or 2 fights away, but it's like, who are you going to fight at 147? I mean, maybe this is the time for Manny Pacquiao to fight a Mikey Garcia on a send-off fight, because Mikey Garcia is not as big as Yordenis Ugas. But, you know, once you start asking those types of questions in terms of matchmaking, and you've got the legendary status of Manny Pacquiao, plus the schedule and the responsibilities that he has, what do you do at that point? And then so you also take a look at the press conference. Longtime trainer, historic, legendary trainer, Freddie Roach is even saying, yeah, I'm pretty concerned about Manny Pacquiao fighting in the future. You know, he's had a great career. We've been together a long time. And so, you know, Freddie Roach sounds like he is open to the idea and very welcoming of the idea of Manny Pacquiao hanging him up. And, you know, Manny Pacquiao, of course, he's not going to give you an answer one way or the other. He hasn't announced yet whether he's going to run for president for the Philippines. So there are a lot of things that are going to have to fall into place. You know, Manny Pacquiao is going to make an announcement at some point. You know, it felt like a retirement fight, and I wouldn't be mad at seeing Pacquiao retire at this point. You know, he has shown everything that you could possibly show in the ring, and he has treated us to multiple decades of greatness. You know, I saw one of those memes recently where it showed, you know, him doing work in the 90s professionally, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, like 4 decades, having touched 4 decades. So yeah, the legacy is solidified. Yes, of course, we all wanted to see Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao, to see if Manny Pacquiao could basically do the unthinkable. And I didn't think he was going to do it. And if they, you know, fight in 9 months, assuming Errol Spence is okay, because that's another question mark, I don't think Manny Pacquiao beats an Errol Spence. And, you know, this was just enough of a beating to tell you that it's time to hang it up without totally forcing you to hang it up. This wasn't him getting knocked out cold or him getting beaten in a brutal fashion where he's just barely hanging on by the end of the fight. This wasn't any of that. It wasn't a TKO stoppage where it's a quit on the stool or the ref has to jump in or somebody throws in a towel. This might have been the ideal retirement type of fight. No, it wasn't against the best in the division as it would have been against Errol Spence, but Ugas is nearly as good as it gets at welterweight right now. I know he's not the sexy pick for a lot of people who are into big names, but Ugas, you know, when you look at his pedigree and look at the skill set that he has, he's going to be tough for a lot of guys to beat. I would love to see Ugas, you know, for instance, fight Errol Spence to unify 3 out of the 4 titles. I'd love to see Ugas fight even one of these younger guys. I don't know if Ugas wants to fight one of these younger guys, but, you know, you have the Virgil Ortiz Jr.'s and the Jaron Boots Ennis, you know, type fighters, you know, lurking and emerging. But, man, it is tough watching a legend age in the ring, and Pacquiao just didn't seem to move like he used to. Again, he still found times to let those combinations go. They didn't seem as effective against somebody as crafty as Ugas, and again, Pacquiao wasn't able to stay out of harm's way enough to not get hit to the point where you're losing the round. And I think the right guy won. We'll see what happens in the future. Please let me know what you thought about Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas for the WBA title. You know, the title was like the least consequential of all the things taking place that night. You know, when you have a legend at 42 years old trying to reclaim greatness once again, I mean, that kind of transcends any belt that can be exchanged. And, you know, I, for one, just want to thank Manny Pacquiao, if he does choose to retire, for all of the memories that he has given us as boxing fans. It's been unbelievable. But please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Again, congrats to Yordenis Ugas. Curious to see what's next, who he defends the title against, whether it's going to be against some mandatory that, you know, could be a good one, could not be a good one. We'll see how that whole thing lines up, but I think that most people would want to see at this point maybe an Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas, since there's no evidence that we'll get Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford anytime soon. Spence versus Ugas might be the right fight to make given the way that the titles line up, and Ugas has been one of Errol Spence's mandatories for some time now. But yeah, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.